Hello everyone and welcome to episode 239 of the Property Podcast. I'm Rob B, of course with Rob D, and this week we're looking at holding a successful viewing. At some point in your property journey, you're either going to let out or sell a property, so people are probably going to need to see it. That being the case, this is an episode that you need to listen to. Oh, and we get a little bit political too.
Yeah, viewings might sound like a mundane topic, but it is really important, and there are some small things you can do that can make a very big difference. So it could be one of those episodes where you just pick up a little factoid that makes your investing life a lot easier. The politics coming up as well, and a handy resource of the week. But first, Rob, we need to acknowledge the fine work of our meetup leaders across the land, because we had our October meetups last week.
We did, Rob, and you went all the way to the South Coast to Southampton. So how was it?
It was great, thank you. Actually, I'm still here because in real life, it's the day afterwards. It was fantastic. Really strong meetup. Big numbers down in Southampton. You might not have thought it, but it's one of the biggest. I think after London and perhaps Manchester, it's the biggest we've got. Sarah and her team are doing a fabulous job down there, putting loads of effort in, and it was a really enjoyable evening. So hello to all the lovely people I met down there. And if you are anywhere on the south coast, or even if you're somewhere south of London. My geography isn't the best for the south of England, weirdly. I didn't realise how close Southampton was to London. I thought it was much further away. So even if you are somewhere south of London, it's an easy one to get along to as well. Highly recommended, and very good pizza. So if nothing else persuaded you, the pizza might do.
Whoa, you didn't tell me about the pizza. If I wasn't going to Cheltenham next month, I'd be going down to Southampton for that. And it's why I go to St Albans every year for Christmas, because they do mince pies. We are led by food. Meetup leaders, take note. And remember, if you want to get along to a meetup, it's super simple. Just go to thepropertyhub.net/meetups. Get your free ticket to an event that's bound to be near you, unless you live in the North Pole, because we're pretty much everywhere else. Okay,
something else that's been everywhere this week has been politics. Just as you've been lulled into a full sense of security by the summer break and it had all gone a bit quiet, they are back. The party conferences have been happening, which means that politicians have been out in full force talking about what they're going to do. And lots to be said about housing this time round. So shall we have a quick run through of what the parties are saying about their policies?
Yeah, let's do it. It seems, Rob, that we should get on with the politicians because they talk about property as much as us. Let's go with Labour first.
Yeah. Okay. So here's a summary of what Labour have to say. They say, we will take decisive action to raise standards for private renters by introducing new legal minimum standards to ensure that private rented homes are free from serious faults such as unsafe wiring and appliances, problem damp and vermin. They will also name and shame rogue landlords, those bloody rogues, and introduce tough fines of up to 100k for those who fail to meet new minimum standards. And they will give renters security by making 3-year tenancies the norm, with control on rent rises so that rents do not rise by more than inflation. They will give renters the option of ending the tenancy with 2 months' notice and explore new freedoms for the Mayor of London to do different things in London because of the particular pressures there.
I've got no problem with 3-year tenancies. I think actually most landlords would welcome the option to offer a 3-year tenancy, but that the tenant can end it at any point with 2 months' notice doesn't seem even remotely close to a fair balance there.
No, it's not really, is it? And they'd need to get around the mortgage limitations for any mortgaged properties because they wouldn't let you grant a 3-year tenancy. So that one doesn't seem entirely fair, but then nothing in there really to be too concerned about. If you look at the sort of the general Labour stance and some of the rhetoric, you think they're going to come out with something that landlords should be really afraid of. But actually, yes, there's talk about controlling rent rises. But as we talked about recently on the podcast when we were talking about Scotland, rent rises in line with inflation for the length of a tenancy. I can deal with that. Normally don't put my rents up at all. So that's absolutely fine. And the whole decisive action to raise standards and not allow you to have dodgy wiring and problem damp and vermin, well, that's already there anyway. The politicians seem to do this a lot. They seem to introduce more rules for the same thing because it sounds better to announce something new than to just try harder to enforce the powers they've already got. You already can't have any of these things, and I'm sure no one listening to this podcast would do. So nothing to be too concerned about there. So that's Labour, but the Conservatives have been busy making promises too.
Yeah, they found some money, Rob. So first of all, $2 billion for council housing. You think that's a lot of money. Obviously, council housing is important, but more important to the Conservative government and I can't think why they'd want more homeowners, is a 10 billion for Help to Buy. Another 10 billion on top of the billions that have already gone in.
I was trying so hard not to be cynical, but it's impossible not to be, because you're right, Rob. It's so predictable. It's obvious they want more homeowners. There's no money, there's no magical money tree, but then suddenly there's an extra 10 billion. Where did that come from? So Help to Buy has been extended out to 2021, I think it is, whereas previously it was meant to end earlier. So one of the ingredients, perhaps, in that second part of the cycle, once we get past the wobble, who can say?
At the very least, it's done my share prices in property no harm. But I'd rather have some sensible policies than my shares go up a bit. Moving on then into the rest of the policies. We'll make it mandatory for every landlord to be part of an ombudsman scheme, either directly or through a letting agent. Require all letting agents to be regulated in order to practice. Coming in on those two, absolutely, yeah, why not? It's no biggie there. I don't think many landlords would moan at that. It means we'll just have good landlords in the system. And letting agents, well, it's optional at the moment. Most do it. So why not get everyone to do it? It'll, again, just maybe weed out a few of the rubbish ones. Interesting, the next one. Little detail, though, as you'd expect. We create new incentives for landlords who offer longer tenancies. Working with the Treasury, we'll announce an autumn budget, a new set of incentives for landlords who offer tenancies of at least 12 months. Sounds interesting. We'll see what those incentives are, because they haven't been quick to offer incentives to landlords over the last few years. It's more been punishment. But we'll see in the autumn budget. And finally, we will consult on a judiciary on the case for a new housing court to streamline the current system. We'll explore whether a new housing court could improve existing court processes, reduce dependence on legal representation, and encourage arbitration, with benefits for both tenants and landlords.
Yeah, so again, the devil's in the detail, but on the face of it, nothing particularly to worry about there. I like the sound of an incentive. At Yellow, all our tenancies by default are 12 months unless the tenant wants shorter. So all our landlords are in line for an incentive if that happens. The regulation we already kind of knew about on the letting agent side. And the housing court, again, you don't really know until they say more about it. It just sounds like a quick idea someone's had in time for the speech. But if it's done properly, then it seems entirely sensible, because it does take a really long time to evict. It's clogging up the court system for other cases. So you'd think that makes sense. So we will see.
Yeah, we will see. I'm looking forward to seeing what these incentives are. Would it be nice if we got like a little hamper through every time we offered like a 12-month tenancy or something like that?
Or a meerkat toy or something like that. Yeah, that'd be great.
Let us know what you think the incentives might be. If you've got an idea of what the Tory government might offer us in the autumn budget, go to thepropertyhub.net/viewing, which is where you can find the show notes for this week's episode. And you can leave your comments in the thread created there.
All right, so that was a little mini topic. Now let's get on to our main topic this week, how to hold a successful viewing. So we're talking about this mainly from the point of view of renting a property, but the vast majority, in fact, I think all of it applies to sales as well. Obviously, you're renting out properties more often than you're selling them, but it works either way. So from the rental point of view, the first thing you need to do is advertise effectively to get people wanting to view in the first place. Luckily, we talked about that recently, about 2 months ago, back in episode 231. So you can go to thepropertyhub.net/find-tenants for that episode. We talked through some interesting ways to advertise that you might not have thought of before. But having done that, you'll have people beating down your door wanting to see your property. From that point, yes, of course, you can bluff your way through. You know how to show someone a property. But there are some simple things that you can do to make it far more likely that you'll get lots of people interested, which means you can get it rented more quickly, which is great. And you'll have a wider choice of potential tenants. Or, of course, if you're selling, it means bidding war, which is what you really want. So, Rob, let's go through how to hold a successful viewing. And it all starts with a bit of preparation.
It does. I wish I didn't have to even read the first one out, but I see this violated as a rule, as a tip, so often that we just have to. And the first one is, make sure the property is ready. I know, listeners, many of you will be pulling faces now, but check the front is tidy, no rubbish in the garden, post is cleared from behind the door, nothing obvious that will put people off inside. If there's tenants in there at the moment, there's clothes all over the place. Try and tidy them up if you can, or encourage them to tidy them up. Just do the obvious things to make the first impression a good one. I know it sounds really simple, but so often it's not done, and that kills so many sales and so many rental opportunities. Another one, though, but this one isn't done as much, but it's a really interesting tactic, is hold block viewings. Now, this is something we do at Yellow Lettings, and it's really, really effective. Because what you do is when you have multiple people turn up to one viewing, so how this would work is you'd say, right, no viewings in a week. All the viewings are between 5 and 6 on Friday, or Saturday at 10 till 12. The reason you do that is twofold. One, it's highly efficient, but two, when everybody is there, they're looking at each other, they start to see the other people there as not other people viewing, but as rivals. And I know it shouldn't work, it shouldn't change the dynamics, but it does. We often find properties, letting properties there and then when we do this. And the reason estate agents do it, or the more switched on ones, is because they know this works as well. So whole block viewings. If you're doing it yourself, then absolutely take this on and try it. If you're using an agent, either a estate agent or a letting agent, and they're not doing this, encourage them. They'll probably thank you and should pay you back some commission.
Yeah, it really is amazing how well it works. It's not something we've always done at Yellow. We started doing it and the difference was really noticeable. It's crazy. Psychology is so important. You think people are rational? No, none of us are. And there's nothing to make someone want something like knowing that other people might want it too. So it really, really works. If you haven't done it before, give it a go. I think you'll be surprised.
Okay, next one, simple, but again important. Text all the details in advance with clear directions. It's getting the person or the people, if there's multiple, coming to view prepared. It's just another mental trigger. One, it's helpful, so that's really good. But two, it's getting them committed mentally that they're going to turn up because you want people to turn up. And again, feel free to text on the day to confirm they're coming again. Because you know what? Life gets in the way of all sorts and it's easy not to turn up to a viewing. So again, it just encourages people to turn up or at the very least let you know if they can't make it. So a few tips there to get you started before they even walk in the door.
So that's what you can do in advance. And then it's time for the viewing itself. What should you be doing there? So again, starting with the obvious stuff, arrive early. Get there a good 15 minutes before any of your viewers are due to turn up. That will give you a chance to air it out and make it feel less stuffy if it's hot. Turn on the heating and get it warmed up a little bit if it's cold. Again, it comes back to first impressions. You could have a beautiful house and it could be perfect in every way, but if it's freezing, people will be put off and they won't even necessarily know why. People form an impression within the first couple of seconds. And it could be something completely random that puts people off. So make it as comfortable as you can. Getting there early gives you a chance to do that. It also gives you a chance to have a tidy up if there are tenants living there at the moment. So doing viewings when a property is tenanted is tough, or it can be. Sometimes you'll get tenants who are really helpful and accommodating. They'll let you get in for viewings easily at the times you want. They'll tidy up for you and it's absolutely fine. But it can be difficult to get access and they could be not particularly motivated to tidy up. So you can't go through and shift all their stuff around and give it a complete clean, but you can do the basics to make it look more presentable. Then when your viewers turn up, again, you know how to interact with people, I'm sure you do, but there are some little things you can do that will help things out. So the first thing to do is to give them some space. You do not need to trail them around and explain which room is the kitchen. I think they'll figure out it's the one with the fridge and the cooker in it. So you don't need to be tailing them around. Give them some space. Something that the best estate agents do is always let the person viewing walk into the room first. Because if you, as agent or the person showing them around, go in first, you make the room look smaller. I'm not saying you're fat. I'm just saying it's something that happens. Also, when you are talking to them, make sure you tailor what you're saying to what they appear to be interested in. So you don't have to be a genius to detect what's relevant to people. If they turn up and they've got a small child with them, then they're probably going to be more interested in schools than they are in nightclubs. You can get a feel for what matters to them and pull out the relevant selling points. You've probably been in a situation, I know I have loads of times, when someone's trying to sell you something and you can just tell they're giving you the same old pitch that they give everyone and they're talking about all this stuff that you couldn't care less about. It's off-putting. So you don't have to talk loads, but when you do talk, make sure it's relevant to them. And then probably the most important thing of all, apart from the block viewings, is another really simple bit of sales. Actually, ask for the sale. Try to close the deal. If you can, close the deal there and then. Again, this is true for lettings and sales, but particularly lettings. People go cold very quickly. If you can, you want them to commit on the spot. So don't be afraid to actually ask. If you have to, you can leave it till the next day, but do it early the next day. But you're far more likely to get the response you want if you do it there and then. If you leave it longer than the next morning, they'll probably not get back to you with feedback. And feedback's really helpful because it'll give you pointers for what you can improve next time.
Yeah, I know a lot of people will find that uncomfortable asking for the sale to say, do you want it? So if you want to soften it a little, just say, what do you think? Towards the end. Now, if they're clearly enthusiastic, say, yeah, I love it, it's really nice, then it's not going to be so hard asking for them to commit. But if they go, yeah, it's quite nice, yeah, we'll have a think, then you don't need to ask because they've indicated to you already what they're likely to do, which is walk out the door and never speak to you again. If you want to soften that approach, just start with what you think, because you'll get some sort of feedback from that question alone. If you're a bit bolder, by all means, ask for the sale there and then.
Yep, that's something we do at Yellow as well. If someone's interested, then we'll actually call the office there and then and get them to put down their fee and start their application over the phone. If you've got positive momentum and someone's keen, make the most of it. Don't let them go cold. Block viewings, again, are great for forcing that kind of result and making people take action. If you do those two things together, plus some of the other little tips you've talked about, I think you'll find you get your property let or sold pretty quickly.
So as I said right at the beginning with the first point, most of this, not all of it, but most of it is common sense. But there's also sales in there too. And that's important. It's just do the basics and then do a couple of the sales tweaks or marketing tweaks that we've mentioned there as well. And you will find the success rate that you have, whether selling or renting your properties, go up dramatically. So I know sometimes you listen to podcasts, I do the same, where you go, oh, that's a good idea, and you don't implement them. If you are doing this, make sure you try a couple of those things. Maybe just take one, maybe block bookings. But try it, see how it goes, and let us know. The show notes this week at thepropertyhub.net/viewing. Right, resource of the week coming up, which is a spooky one because Rob put it in there, but we have both used this resource. And of course, we'll let you know what's coming up next week. But before we do, let's acknowledge these fine, outstanding people who've left us reviews. First one is Steve-O, and I'm going to assume he's Australian, even though he probably isn't. But Steve-O says, and I won't do the whole review in an accent, don't worry. This is an awesome podcast. I've listened to the first 40 or so, and now I'm working backwards from number 200. As a newcomer to buy-to-let, I'm about to make my first purchase, and the information in these podcasts has been invaluable. The information from these podcasts, along with the information from Rob Dix's books, Property Investment for Beginners, has helped me avoid a host of rookie mistakes that I would otherwise made. Very knowledgeable, very well presented. Can't believe it's free. And a slightly more formal name for the next one. This one's from Jay Phillips, and that's Jay the letter, not the name. Or it could be his name, or her name. Wow, having previously only ever used podcasts for entertainment, I thought I was being a bit mature for spending time in the car learning about investment. Now I've listened to every episode and I do feel fully re-educated in more control of my future. I bought my second buy-to-let because of Rob and Rob's fantastic strategies, did things so much more professionally than I could have possibly done otherwise. I also find myself wholeheartedly entertained, which is the last thing I was expecting. The general work-life advice is also incredibly valuable. Now I have a virtual PA, and as a result I have a quality of life that I'd entirely lost due to being too busy. Thank you, Rob and Rob, for making my future brighter and making my long drives to work genuinely a pleasure. Oh, I like that one. I like both of them.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much. It's so good to hear when people have done something with the information. I know we say it a lot. It's great when it inspires people to big things, but it's also brilliant when there's just a small idea, like the virtual PA. It's really nice to share that stuff and know that people have found it useful because we pick up so many little tips like that from other people and other podcasts as well. So good to keep the knowledge going around. So thank you so much to everyone who's left us a review. If you haven't done so yet, what are you waiting for? You'll get acknowledged on the show and be the envy of all your friends. Maybe, depending on who your friends are. But in any case, if you don't know how to leave a review, go to thepropertyhub.net/podcast and we'll show you how.
Okay, Rob, so this resource of the week you put in, and we've both used, although we didn't know, and it's certainly a resource that will help you get out of a pickle. And it's one of those resources that probably everybody should have if you ever use a computer.
Yes, I am incredibly reliant on Wi-Fi, but I don't think that's unique. I think we all are these days. And so when your Wi-Fi connection goes down or is a bit flaky, I tend to get a bit stressed and a bit angry. But you know what? My home Wi-Fi has been down for nearly a week. And normally by this point, I would be a quivering mess and I would be furious and you wouldn't want to get anywhere near me. But in fact, I've barely even noticed, thanks to this resource of the week. This is a little mobile Wi-Fi device. And Rob, I actually have no idea how to say the name of the company. Do you?
No, so I'm not going to try. But it looks like Hawaii, but it's not. Hawaii?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. I've done the bit where you embarrass yourself. They're a big company. They're absolutely huge. I've seen them in Reading as you drive past on the motorway.
Well, maybe someone from Reading who works there can tell us how you pronounce the name of this company. But anyway, we'll link to it in the show notes so you can find it. That's at thepropertyhub.net/viewing. But anyway, the point is, this is a little mini mobile Wi-Fi device. So basically, it's a tiny little thing about the size of a credit card. You just pop a SIM card in there. It can be any SIM from any network, and it will broadcast a really strong data signal from there to your laptop, your phone, to any devices that you've got lying around. So it works off 4G, so it's not necessarily as fast as your Wi-Fi, but I found that it's actually really, really good. And I've streamed video, I've done webinars and all sorts, and it's been absolutely fine. So it's a really great thing just to have lying around, just in case, because it means that if your connection does go down, you don't have to suddenly rush out to a cafe or something. You just turn it on and carry on as you were.
Yes, we use this device in the R&P property office as well because the internet is pretty important for work, I've found, and as you found as well, Rob. So when occasionally the office internet goes down, we have this as a backup. In fact, actually, we have 2 internet connections and this as the final backup. That's how seriously we take it. But it works. And even across multiple people, yes, you can't do loads of streaming and loads of things that take up bandwidth across multiple people, but you can do the basics even with multiple people on this device. So that's how good it is. So for a few quid, if you use the internet frequently, it's probably one to consider.
Okay, so that is just about us for another week. Episode 239 is a wrap. So we've covered a lot of ground. Hopefully there'll be something in there that you've found useful. You can find all the things that we've talked about at thepropertyhub.net/viewing. Next week, we're going to be back to do it all again, of course. And Rob, an episode for people like me.
Yes, you southern softies. It's an episode on the North. And you can call me what you want, because I can't hear you because it's a podcast. Yes, it's a podcast on the North. It's an introduction to the North because people's geography generally isn't too strong, I've found. Luckily, I've been all over the place in the UK, and because I'm always travelling, my geography of the UK is fairly reasonable. But I don't think that's the case for most people, especially as I once heard Coventry described as one of the biggest cities in the Northwest. So people's geography generally isn't too sharp. So what we're going to do next week, and we'll cover other areas, it's not just a Northern Bias podcast. Next week, we're going to look at an introduction to the North, the Northern Powerhouse, if you will, as it's now been branded. But lots of people know about Manchester and maybe Liverpool and maybe Leeds, but not many people know much more beyond that. And actually their knowledge of those major cities as well is fairly limited. So we're going to give you an introduction to those places, things that you probably had no idea about right now, that possibly only people local to it understand, or maybe they don't even know what's on their doorstep or what's happening right now. So it's going to be a really good episode. Make sure you join us for that one.
Yes, indeed. We look forward to seeing you then. And of course, we'll see you before then on Tuesday for Ask Rob and Rob. In the meantime, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, enjoy doing it, and we'll see you very soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to The Property Podcast. For show notes, all our past episodes, and to leave a review, go to thepropertyhub.net/podcast.